What's up, Michael Pokusa? Good morning, my friend. Me. Was it? Oh, enough time. It's like, I'm not gonna get the boxes. You can get rid of those angle brackets. What's up, Tyth? Me again. Nice to see you. Habit of just going with non-time specific. What's up, DJ Devin? Good morning. See you as well, my friend. This one here. All right. All set there. So, welcome. First of all, thanks to everyone watching. Get the browser. For anybody that's new, if you don't know, my name is Tim. I go by Foamy Guy on GitHub and Discord, and I usually stream around this time each week, 10 a.m. Central Time. US Central Time is what it is for me. And we are working on some CircuitPython stuff usually at this time, or at least some something surrounding. We did Raspberry Pi stuff a couple weeks back that was just regular Python, not necessarily CircuitPython, but we're back into the CircuitPython world this week. If you are new, catching this in the future, and you don't know what CircuitPython is, you can learn more at the main website for it here, circuitpython.org. This is basically a version of Python that runs on tiny computers that are called microcontrollers, such as the Metro RP2350, which is the one that I have hooked up today. This one has kind of like an Arduino Uno form factor. So if you've ever heard of Arduino, this is kind of in the same vein. This is just a different way to program microcontrollers. Arduino is one way, CircuitPython is a different way. CircuitPython is what I work on here. The way that it works at a high level is you'll plug it into your computer, usually with a USB cable, like this one has USB-C over here. Plug it in, shows up like a thumb drive. You can save your code file on that drive, and then you have Python code in there, and when you save it, the actual computer inside the microcontroller, computer that is the microcontroller, will interpret and execute that Python code for you. Your Python code then can interact with other devices and peripherals. So in this case, the board, it has an SD card built in. It has kind of a display connector over here that can get you to a HDMI compatible screen. And then it's got a bunch of I/O pins with which you can hook up whatever you want. So that is the high-level view of CircuitPython. As always, huge thanks to Adafruit. Adafruit is a hardware and software company based out of New York. They're the ones who make CircuitPython possible by paying myself and the rest of the team who works on CircuitPython. They design and create microcontroller devices like this Metro RP2350 that I'm using today is a Adafruit design, Adafruit hardware. You can buy those and all sorts of other little bits and bobs that you can hook up to your microcontrollers over at their website, adafruit.com. And as always, huge thanks to everyone who does so. Yeah. Good morning, Paul Cutler. Nice to see you today, my friend. Let's go to one more thing I'll show you. Actually, I meant to pull this up before we got off the Adafruit site. So I do have a Metro 2350, but today we are in display land, and the Metro 2350 obviously doesn't have built-in display. It's got the connector here that will get you to an HDMI compatible display, but in my case, I don't necessarily want to do that right now because I can't capture it for the stream very well. I do have a line on a new adapter, so hopefully at some point we'll be able to capture a bit better. But for now, I have a display on top. Very blurry. No. Actually doing. And then, so what I was going to pull up is, the display, which I have connected to it, is the Shield, like TFT field, I think. I don't know exactly which one. Probably this one since I've purchased it before. But it basically just fits right on top of that Metro using the pins along the sides as well as the connector there, in this case for SPI. So that gives us a display to work on. And we are diving into emojis today. So have followed your emoji talk and work. I wonder if it's a font replacement or a label type or tile grid, and effectively how I would get it running on a Matrix Portal M4 or a Pi Portal. Presumably you're using display IO to an HSTX DVI HDMI thing. Yes, all very good questions and all stuff you will see today, and I will we'll jump right in to the code here, and we can answer some of those right away. Did I test on HDMI? I think I plugged the Metro into an HDMI screen, but I was not working on Emoji at the time. I don't think I have tested that over there, although I believe it should work the same as any other display. I have tested it on Pi Portal. It works fine there. In order to use it for right now, the way that you can use it is get it from the repo. Actually, it should be in the bundle, I think, right? Did it merge to the bundle yesterday, I think? And then we should have had a new bundle overnight. So it should be in the, I think it should be in the bundle now. You should be able to install it with CircuitPython. It is Adafruit _display _ emoji text. If it doesn't work with CircuitPython, then maybe, yeah, it's there. That, and then we should have had a new bundle overnight, right? Really? Yeah, 11 hours ago. Yeah, should be in there. It should definitely work on a Pi Portal. It should definitely work on a Matrix Portal as well. The emoji are, they all fit within a 10 by 10 pixel square. So on the Matrix Portal, it's like 64 by 32, depending on which screen you have. I think there's a couple of different ones. I think we're gonna go just a tad up on this. Yeah, so it would take up like a third of the screen. I don't know exactly how well all the emojis will render on the LEDs on the Matrix panels, but it should work fine once you initialize the display, because it does use display IO. To answer the next question in that line, well, I'm going out of order, I guess. It does use display IO essentially, and it effectively, honestly, the best way to visualize it is with the old label. The old way that label works. So if we go to display text guide here, and then types of labels. So label right here. This page is actually explaining the difference between regular label and bitmap label. The way that regular label works is effectively the way that emoji text works. Each character gets a bitmap and a tile grid, and then the text class itself essentially is a group. In this case, label has a group, I think, whereas just the emoji one right now is a group. It actually is a widget, which extends group, so it's kind of 2 layers down, but it does still, it is still a group. So each character, each ASCII character gets a bitmap, and then each emoji also gets a bitmap and a tile grid. Theoretically, there's ways it could potentially be improved a bit, but this is most easy. If HSTX can go to DVI, you can use DVI capture dongle. Yeah, so I have a USB-C to HDMI cable adapter thing, but it doesn't work very good, basically. Like, I've tried it a few times. There's a couple streams in the past where we did some with the Feather DVI out. So like I had it running at one point, and it does feed in, but the thing about it is that it essentially, my OBS seems to get confused between it and the camera. It kind of treats them both as the same thing, sort of, a little bit, kind of sometimes. And so what happens is if I connect that capture thing and I get it set up to be pulling data in, and it works, then I go to OBS, and then all of a sudden, like, in the circle where I am around me here is the the feed in from that thing, and it's all messed up because it's like cropped to a circle, and I have other filters for size and stuff on the camera to get it so that my face actually lines up with this. So it gets all messed up, and then if I try to go back to the camera is all distorted because I have to like undo a bunch of my stuff for it to get the feed in. So I have a new one. I have a new one that's in my cart actually. So the next order that I do from Adafruit, I'll end up with one that they sell, which is the one that Scott uses. Scott's on Linux. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that that one will help, you know, allow me to kind of do everything without as much pain in OBS. Yeah. Once we get the capture thing hooked up, then I will not be doing the LCD. I'll switch from the capture thing to the LCD. The LCD I have been working on just because it's more convenient right now, and because I can get it into the stream easier with the top-down shooter. Kind of see the silhouette of here. Maybe a Linux history. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's kind of how it goes on Linux, right? Like, especially with external hardware and stuff, is it's always a bit of an uphill battle, it seems like, but it's gotten better over the years that I've used it. So, and I'm hoping that this one will just kind of work without too much of a headache, since I know that Scott uses it on Linux and stuff, and has fed in from the exact same thing, which like ultimately will be a fruit jam that we're feeding in from. So I know that's working for him. Let me see. Did I answer all the questions? How would you get it running on a matrix portal? Yeah, so it should be easy. You just get the library, and then like, in fact, this sample should just work on a PyPortal as is, and then on the matrix portal, the only thing you would need to change is initialize your matrix display, and then set like matrix.display instead of board.display. And then the rest of this code should just work on a matrix portal as well, I'm pretty sure. Oh, very important. Also, though, you need to put the emojis on the device, which I didn't mention. There is an error message, so you would see it eventually. This error message, though, you need to actually put the emojis on your device. So for this library to work, it expects to find a folder called Emoji, which and the emoji images are not part of the repo, so you need to load them separately. Let me go to the device here. Okay, so on your device, you need a folder called Emoji. Inside that folder, you need all the PNG emoji files, and they need to have the, I don't know, is that Unicode or whatever? They need the values for each emoji character as the names in this format, U+ and then hex. If there are multiple values, they are separated by underscores. The easiest place, the recommended place, the only place really that I will say at this time is supported. Like, theoretically, if you have a set of PNGs that follow that mold, they should just work with this, but that's theoretical. The only ones that I will say do, in fact, definitely work right now are these ones from Serenity OS. So huge thanks to Serenity OS again. I mentioned Hug Report on the meeting, but yeah, seriously, super cool that this project put their emoji out like this for everyone else to use. That's really awesome. From here, though, download images on the right side here. That's going to download a zip, and if you unzip that, inside of it are all the files. So you need to basically copy paste all of these to your drive. It takes a minute, and when I say a minute, I mean more like 10 minutes-ish. It took me like multiple minutes of files copying. I just kind of let it go, do its thing. I will say also, like, probably back up your CircuitPy drive would be good. Like, it's going to copy 1,700 files or whatever. Like, I haven't had it become a problem, but I suspect if anything went weird in the middle, like, it might corrupt the drive. So, I don't know, maybe back up your drive before you do it. It's a lot of files. It takes a long time. You know, if the cable gets jarred or something in the middle, I just don't want you to lose anything. So copy those over. They take up, so the amount they take up, I'm unclear entirely on. So if I select all the files in this folder on my computer, this reports to me 258K at 1,750, items there. But I come to understand, I think there's a little bit more overhead for the file, I guess, metadata stuff, the file name and stuff like that. So by the time it gets to the drive, I think that it's actually closer to like 900K, or maybe even a meg. But I don't know how to measure it precisely, other than the fact that this says 258K. I had a drive with 500K available, and I pasted this onto it, and it failed halfway through, and the drive was full. I think it was either NearDoc or Anecdata, one of the two. My apologies, I have to scroll up in the chat, but one of them mentioned, I think it was NearDoc, mentioned about something to do with the file system taking up a little bit of extra space. So that's the other caveat. You need enough room for it. You have to put those on there. But beyond that, the existing simple test should just work on a PyPortal, and then a matrix portal if you just swap the display. I think it should work as well. Got you to do it look a bit like bitmap label replace type thing. If H6, oh, I scrolled up. Sorry. Let's see here. Maybe some crazy UDEV to ensure the device naming and ordering in OBS. Oh, that might work. May I have a question about what you showed on Show and Tell? If I understand correctly, I should be able to connect a USB and an Xbox controller. Be able to connect an Xbox controller to USB host feather, read its HID descriptor, and then simulate the specific key presses on a different feather. I had some problems defining the descriptor myself, as the Xbox uses 1024 range for sticks, and the example uses 128 if I'm correct. Yeah, first of all, totally you can ask questions about anything. That's totally fine. Same as Scott. I'm happy to go and answer questions. Yeah, so the USB thing, the controller that I was using, it does the joysticks go to 256, so they fit within 1 byte. For a joystick that does use 1024 and therefore cannot fit in 1 byte, I don't know exactly how it would work. You probably would need to like read 2 bytes and then either use struct or somehow interpret it as the right as a byte. But feather USB, feather RP24 to USB. Yeah, the new code is here. USB host read data is it's in this learn guide page for anyone looking for it. And yeah, I can't say that I tried with a legit, like, if you mean like an actual Xbox from Microsoft controller. I didn't try with one, but it should work if it's USB HID, to the best of my knowledge. And then read its descriptor. I'm not sure if I understand what you mean, simulate specific key presses on a different feather. So this example gets you to reading data from the controller and then printing it out only. So if you wanted to go further than that, like interpreting that input and then sending it into another feather, that's not necessarily covered here. That is something you could do theoretically, I guess, right? Through serial or whatever communication link, but it's not necessarily covered here. This just reads data from the one controller and prints it out. So it would help you figure out like which bytes in the data map to which buttons on the controller and which bytes map to the joysticks, and so on and so forth, and like how the data is represented. Yes, that's Unicode. How much file storage? I'm on an S3 with 16 megabytes of flash, but not everyone will have that much space. Yep. I think, yeah, the storage space, like I was saying, it's a bit squirrely. Like, I would say like a meg. Like, I think it's a meg or less. It may be a fair amount less. Like, 250K is only a quarter of that, but there's something else going on there. Let's see here. I've been thinking about OTA-like behavior for CircuitPython. It would get from GitHub, check the SSHA, and then using that next coder find file boot to use the latest CodePy with an old CodePy run by safety script and error. Long story short, the CodePy could offer to download the latest emojis. I don't think, like, while it is theoretically possible to download the emojis, like have code on the device, download them to the device for you, that is theoretically possible, but I don't think that it's probably the easiest way to go. I suspect, A, that it would take a long time to unzip them. I haven't tried, but like, I'm not 100% sure the way they are zipped is supported by zlib or whatever we have for unzipping. If it's not, that would be a problem. If it is, then theoretically it should be possible, but I have to think that the download and the unzip are more likely to go smoothly on the computer. And then the copying itself does already take, like I said, several minutes. It would be nice to not take that time, but I suspect the unzip, like I suspect we would end up taking that time anyway, doing the unzipping and such. OTA for like code files though, I do think that would be pretty cool to have a mechanism for CodePy. Like if you could kind of set up a server where it's like, this is my current revision of CodePy, and then whenever the device boots up, it's going to like check in there, and if there's a new one, it will download it and do it. Because like CodePy is usually just, 1 or 2K or 10K or whatever. It's not terribly big. It's not having to unzip. It's not having to do all of that. That I think would be a pretty sweet mechanism. Not for everyone, right? I think not everyone needs that, but there are situations where I could find that to be pretty useful for sure. I believe the difference in total file size might be caused by allocation unit. Oh, yeah, that's right. They were saying the block size or whatever be different to your PC and the MCU. I want to use another feather as HID gadget, which would simulate an Xbox controller, like you could do with a keyboard. Ah, interesting. That part I know less about. Yeah, I don't know for sure how that would work. I think that I think this might be the guide you need. For the half where you're going back to another thing. The half that I did and the stuff I showed on Show and Tell is like inputting from the controller. I think that this guide is more about outputting back to another thing as HID from CircuitPython. I have no experience with it really though. I'll drop the link though if you want to check it out. I honestly, I want to say there's one more as well. Isn't there a guide? There's a guide. I know there's a guide where there's a Super Nintendo controller as the picture. This one. Oh, that's matrix scanning. Okay. Yeah, that's not necessarily relevant. This was the picture I was thinking of in my head, though. I don't know, I must have got those two guides confused somehow. Okay. So what I'm gonna work on today. So first of all, okay, yeah. I say first of all, we're 25 minutes in, but that's cool. I think the other thing I wanted to mention is huge thanks this week to NearDoc. NearDoc fixed, so this is messed up. This is a messed up version of the New Zealand flag, I think, right? New Zealand flag. So this one is not rendering properly on my screen here. And NearDoc actually fixed this and a bunch of other ones that weren't working. So huge thanks to them. And we can get it to be fixed on my screen by just going back to the fixed version of the library. It is, I believe, already released. So I think if I just go circa found that had problems with the custom report, so I was hoping you could hoping I could copy paste from one, reading it to the there you go. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I mean mine does my guide does help you dump the data that you read from it, so like theoretically it should contain all the data that is for that. I think it just passes it to, I don't have the code up anymore. I think it passes it to a Python library called like USB host descriptors. Not sure exactly what it does inside there to break it apart, but I think that's what my code does, but it should theoretically just reading data. It should allow you to get what you need. So yeah, there's the updated image load, and then there is the one that is rendering properly now with the little stars in the proper like kind of diamond shape there. And obviously the cross is working correctly now as well. So yeah, huge thanks to NerdDoc. Fixed that one, the New Zealand flag. There's also others. The pink heart one wasn't working right as far as emojis, and there's probably a bunch more, but those are the ones that I know of. I think one of the other colors of heart is, as well. I think light blue maybe or something. All that stuff was not working, and NerdDoc fixed it, and that's awesome. And okay. So actual improvements here. I think what I would like to work on first, I actually went and made some issues the other day with what I had in mind so far. And I think where I want to start is text updating. So diving into the code a bit more. One more thing actually that I'm going to do though is I'm going to grab a copy of the current one in the repo updated, so that's what's on my device, so that I make sure any changes I make, I will then be able to copy back to the repo, and we'll be getting like the same version essentially, been updated. Okay, so I will run you through the code real quick here, because we're going to basically be in the middle of this part anyway, and I need to wrap my head back around it. So the way this works right now, you can only really create a emoji label. So you create it, you pass it some text. It extends group, so you can pass it a scale if you want to get bigger text, which that's the same as how label works. But there's no update, right? Like we're always telling people with label and bitmap label to like not create a new one over and over again, and instead like call, you know, emoji label.text equals new text, right? This doesn't exist yet. So that's what I would like to add first. And basically the way that it does work currently, you get your text, you get your scale. It's accepting a font, but there's some stuff that wouldn't work if you actually tried to change the font. So that's another one of the issues. It will check if the emoji exists. If they don't, then it will tell you where to go download them. It will load up the font into a property. It will get the color for the font palette. So one of the other issues is color. Text updating, foreground, background colors, custom fonting first. We have a width, we have a height. Those are in pixels. We default to 12 because we're basically assuming that we're going to be at least one row tall. We have a bounding box, which theoretically should probably actually have the height here, because that's X, Y, width, height. So that technically should match. Theoretically, like, we're storing redundant information. We probably shouldn't, but it makes some of the other stuff easier. So we are. Row width, this is the how wide in pixels the current row that we are rendering is. So, you know, we're gonna, as we render, we're gonna render one character or emoji at a time. And as we do that, we're gonna keep track of how wide the current row is. Last X, last Y, this is basically the pixel where we want to paste the next character, or maybe like the name implies, I guess maybe it's where we pasted the last character. I think it's actually where we're going to put the next one. We'll have to see in the code though. Skip count. This is a variable that is necessary because some of the emoji are multiple characters. Like this has U plus 1F whatever, and then U plus 1F again over here. So there's technically two characters inside that character. So as we're parsing our string, we're going for I character in enumerate text. When we get to one of those multi-code characters, it's going to count as two characters here. We're going to get two iterations for that one emoji, right? I think of it as one character because it's one emoji, but it's actually two characters. And, you know, spoiler alert, there's some that are 4, there's some that are 5, there's more than 2 as well. So skip count is basically how many of the next characters do we need to skip because they were actually part of a multi-code one. So in the case of 2, we would have a skip count of 1 because we're going to find the first one. We're going to realize that it's a 2-1, and then we're going to set the skip count to 1 to say, hey, the next character, we're actually skipping it because it was part of the one before. So that's what that variable is. That's our loop that's iterating through the characters of the text. This is how the skip count actual mechanism works. If it's greater than 0, subtract it from, subtract 1. and then continue. So go on to the next iteration of the loop here, skip all the rest of the stuff. If we don't have a skip count, so if the skip count is 0, then we get to here. If the character is a new line, plus 12 to basically go to the next Y, so go down by 12 pixels, 12 because that's how big the font is. So that's one of the hard-coded things that we would need to change for custom fonts. Last X goes to 0 because we want to start at the beginning of a new row. Height gets plus 12 because we got 12 pixels taller. Row width goes back to 0 because we're starting a new row again. Bounding box 3 equals height, so we update the height inside the bounding box as well, which again, we have redundant information, but it makes some other stuff easier. Continue, so if we did all of this, if we did find the new line character and we did all of this, then we're done for this character. We've handled the new line, we don't need to do anything else. So we continue on to the next character. If it wasn't a new line, the next thing we do is this, found glyph equals font.getGlyph. If it is not none, that means we actually did find it. So it was like an ASCII character that we're able to show with this font. So if it's not none, then we found it to show as a regular character, just a letter or a number or a character or whatever, not an emoji. So in that case, we make a bitmap. The width and height are equal to the glyphs width and height. The value count is 2 because it has foreground and a background. The offset X, honestly, I don't even know what that does. I think I copied it out of label. Oh, no. You know what this is? This is the location in the font bitmap. So the font, like terminal.font, it's actually a long bitmap of characters, and you need to know where in the bitmap the character you're looking for is. And that is what this value is ultimately. Tile index times the width. So it's a monospace font, and that's saying the index of the tile times the width will get you to the right spot of that super long bitmap. So that's what this is. Then we blit, which is like copy paste for bitmaps. We're going to copy paste a chunk out of one bitmap into another one. The one we're copying, I think, into, destination bitmap is BMP. That's the one we created here. Source is fontglyph.bitmap. So that's the super long one. We're going to copy out of that one. The place where we're going to paste it into our destination, 0, 0, so top left. X1, Y1, this is where we're going to start cutting from our font one. So that's our glyph offset there, how far into the font bitmap we want to go. 2 is how far in plus 1 width. So we want to cut 1 character's width. And then we want to go Y2 is the height of the font glyph. So in our case, 12, but we do have a variable there. So different fonts, like this part of the code would work with different fonts, but our hard-coded 12s here would break stuff or make it not look good. Okay, so that's going to copy out of the font bitmap into this bitmap. Then we create a tile grid. We have our ASCII palette. We set our tile grid X and Y to last X, last Y. So yeah, this technically, these should be called next. Let's do that right now. Next X and next Y. Because technically we update those after we place a character, and then the next time we place a character, we place them at those places. So those are the next ones. Okay, so we place our tile grid. We update our row width to equal plus the width of the bitmap. If the width of the entire label is less than the row, so if the current row we're working on is wider than the width of the entire label, then we need to update the width of the entire label because the row we're working on is inside of it. So, once the row goes bigger, then the width of the parent, the entire one, goes bigger as well. So we update the width, we update the bounding box. Even if that was not the case, we need to update our next X. So we're going to go, 1 width over next time. And then we append that tile grid to self, because remember, we're extending group, so we append that to group, and it's been placed by those values there. Okay, so all of that is if it was a ASCII character, a character that our font can render. else it was an emoji. It was not a character that our font can render, so all of this is for emojis. So we go bitmap is none. We go this range thing, multi-code ranges. These are these, and these basically represent the start and the end of ranges of emoji characters where there are multiple code value ones available. Honestly, this is probably not the best way to store this information in hindsight, because a lot of them are only like, well, I mean, some of them are one length, right? 35, 35. That's just saying the emoji that has code value 35 is a valid first code character for multi-code emojis. This one is saying, 42 is a valid first character for multi-code emojis. The ones that actually have more range, though, are saying any number within this range. Like this one has a little bit bigger range. 127462 all the way to 127487. So that's like 15 or whatever. Those 15 in between there, those are all valid first character codes for emojis. Again, this is probably not the best way to do this, but it is the way I ended up with. It's going to go through those ranges, and it's going to check the current character and say, is it in between any one of those ranges? If it is, then we want to check those multi-codes. So the first thing we do is actually check for a 5-wide emoji. So it's going to take the current character and the next 4 characters, append them all together into a .png file name, and then try to like load that file. And if it doesn't exist, then this will fail. If it does exist, because that's for 5 wide, and we know that we're currently looking at the first one, we want to skip the next 4, and then we break. Then if that was not the case, so if we tried to open that file, it didn't exist, we threw an exception, we didn't do anything with our exception, we go on to here. We try a 4 wide, so we take the current character and the next 3, append them together into a PNG, try to load it. If it works, then we say, hey, we're going to skip the next 3 characters, and we break. If it doesn't work, then finally the last thing we try is a double wide, 2 wide. So we take the current character and the next character, we add them together into a PNG file name, we try to load it. If it works, we set the skip count to 1 to say we want to skip the next one. We break, and then we go on. If all of those failed, then currently it will just print out a message that it was unable to render at the very end. But after it has tried 5, 4, and then 2, if it still has not succeeded, if bitmap is still none, then it will try a single one. So take the current character, PNG file, try to load it. If it fails, then we finally just bail all the way. We say we can't render it. Note to self, we need to check if there are 3s. I don't know if there are 3s. I've done 2s and 4s and 5s and 1s. If there are 3s, this code won't work, but I don't know for sure if there are. Turning out to be far more complex. Yeah, it was, I mean, there's a fair bit to it. I will say, I mean, conversely, I will say I was pleasantly surprised with how easy it turned out to be. It seems complex for sure if you have never taken apart like the label class, but if you have been inside the label class before, this will feel right at home, basically. And within the class, the emoji text palette is available for manipulation as well. Could it be exposed as a property? Yeah, it totally could. Yeah, it's under, well, I mean, technically right now it's ASCII palette as a field, and it doesn't have leading underscore, so it's not pretend private. You could totally just do that and change it. I will say, like, here, let's get the code running again. And I'll show you that there is other problems with that, basically. There's more work to do, essentially. So this was all my test code for image load stuff. All right, let's make sure that works. Okay, so yeah, to your point, the palette, it is technically public. You could totally just change it, and that you would think would get you towards, well, I mean, it will get you towards the color thing, but I'll show you the problem is if we go like 0 equals pink. I don't know which is foreground and which is background off the top of my head, so we'll see. It'll be a pleasant surprise. Yeah, sure, pink and green, let's say. Okay, so pink is pink is the background, and it's a bit too bright, but you can see. So on the characters it worked, but on the emoji it doesn't. To throw another wrench into it, like, well, anyway, let's get into the colors later. I think that some of the PNGs are transparent and some aren't, but maybe I was seeing something weird when I saw it. But yeah, there's some work to do for the colors, but you know, it's partway there, and it will probably be that you could just gank the palette and do whatever you want with it. I think that's ultimately fine, but I'll probably make it simpler too. Like I'll add color stuff here, right? You'll be able to pass in color and background color. Okay, let's see. I can deheat. That's not where we were. Okay, we were almost at the end of the code, so let's step through the rest of the code, and then we'll kind of get to doing new stuff. So that was the single one. After all of that is done, we try to create a tile grid with our bitmap. We try to set it at the... Oh, those didn't update. Why didn't those update? Oh, I'm back in the repo. Hold on. Okay, there we go. We set our tile grid at the location. Again, this is like same logic we saw before. I think we saw it with the ASCII characters before. This is just for the emoji. So row gets bigger by bitmap width. If the current row is wider than the overall label's width, we need to bump the overall label's width. So we do that. Bounding box, again, we're duplicating data, so we need to update that as well. Next X goes 1 more pixel past the width of the bitmap. So there's 1 pixel in between emojis if you have 2 emojis one after another in your string. And then we append the tile grid to self. You know, we're extending group, so that puts it on the display for us. Unsupported bitmap if things have gone wrong. So that's actually all there is to it. Again, it is a lot if you're not used to the inside of label or the way that the emoji codes work and stuff like that, which the emoji codes actually were all new to me. So that part took me a bit to get my head wrapped around. But the way the layout works is actually remarkably similar. Okay. So what we want to do though, I think, is I want to make a like an inner function that will get called by a init. So we're going to have like place text or something. We're also going to want to have a text property. I'm going to say self.text. I'm going to say underscore text, and it's going to be equal to the text that came in as an argument. And then we'll make text properties. I'm freaking out the formatter here, but see, yeah, it doesn't want to like. We'll hope it out for a minute. No returns. I don't know if I really want to call it place text. I think that's what it's called inside of label. So part of me is like use the same name that's inside a label, but the other part of me is like maybe something else would make more sense. Oh, I was wrong, actually. It's not place text. Create background box. Update text. Update. I think I'm okay with update text. That one was passing it in. I mean, I guess we could do that, but realistically, we have self.text. I think we should just read it from there instead of pass it to this function. Like, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another, but for some reason it just seems simpler to me if there's not a pass through, and instead we just use the property that we know we want. Why is this mad? Too many blank lines? Yeah. Down here, it's like not enough blank lines. Okay. So pretty much all of this logic that we stepped through here we need all of it. And I think we also need this stuff because I think we want to reset our size. Yeah, because we might end up, like very likely we are to end up at a different size. That sentence was all out of order, but hopefully the point made sense. So we're going to do this, but then instead of, oh, okay, that part we don't though. This part we keep up here. I mean, some of this, I guess like, it's technically redundant, but it feels bad to create variables that will stay existing for the entire life of this object inside of update text rather than create them in a init, right? So I'm going to set them here, and then basically immediately we're about to call update text, and like that's going to set them again to the same values, which is redundant, but honestly it just feels bad to not set them here, even though it works. But I don't know, I'm going to keep it this way. Yeah, and then this would be text. Oh, we could, well, it's not called a function, we can just access the value. Okay, does that much work? Yes. Pleasantly. Gonna run it again just to make sure. Okay. Theoretically, we should be able to update it, I think, right? So let's say run this time.sleep 3 seconds, and then emoji label.text equals thing you. But I mean, we have to have some. Well, it's really good. Hackaday. Goggles? Okay, so set the first time, 3 seconds, something new. Here we go. Got robot, kitty, call it Hackaday, skull and crossbones. The alien, we should look at the alien by itself. Is it a little messed up? We'll take the like an extra sort of line here kind of thing. And there's also something that's part of, oh, okay, that's part of the goggles. Goggles actually are a goggle and snorkel. Oh, hold on. Oh, somebody forgot to like take all the old bitmaps and tile grids out of the group. I don't know. Yeah, so totally. Whenever we do this, we actually need to, how do you remove all the things from a group? I guess just like while length greater than row remove, first thing. So we're layering up right now. We actually have we have the old text on bottom and the new text on top. Group. Okay, yeah, there's remove a specific layer, and there's pop, which removes a specific index. There's del, deletes a thing. That might be what we want to do, actually. Like, ultimately, we're trying to, like, give the memory back. At some point, one thing that I will do is try to be more efficient. Like, don't throw away a bitmap if we can reuse it. So, like, if the person, like, let's imagine a world where a person is, like, creating a high scoreboard or something, right? And maybe they want, like, you know, star emoji and then, like, colon and then a number, right? And let's say, you know, they're going to be constantly updating the number, but not the star and the colon, right? It would be a shame to like re-render the star emoji every time. So ultimately, what I would like is while we're checking this, we'd be like, hey, is the current character the same as like the most basic case would be, is the current character the same as the one that's already there? And if so, then just like skip it, don't re-render it. And even better, like another step up from that would be like, keep all the old bitmaps in a cache, and then when we render the new ones, check the cache for that bitmap and use it. So then even if it's in a different location, we could actually still reuse the bitmap and the tile grid. But one step at a time. One step at a time. I'm not going to get ahead of myself other than just explaining my ideas. For now, let's keep it simple and just say while length of self is greater than 0. So remember, we are a group, so length of group, I think, is the number of items in the group, hopefully. Seems unhappy with it, but we're a few layers down. I'm going to say hopefully the IDE is just confused. Then just let's delete the first one. So we keep deleting the first one over and over until we have none left. What was this? It said del self. See if that like crashes or anything. So the first time it won't have anything to delete. There we go. Okay, yeah, now we are no longer stacked up. Okay, it's not, there is no snorkel, it's just goggles. The snorkel was part of the J in emoji from last time. That's funny. Okay, that's working now. I don't think pop removes it but from memory, but remove will. That's my understanding. And actually, my understanding is they will. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's probably right. I mean, pop definitely doesn't remove it from memory because it returns it. Remove certainly sounds like it would get rid of it from memory. But yeah, I'm unclear. I don't know what. Well, so one difference between del, like I used, and remove, one difference is del works by index, whereas remove works by instance. You have to pass the instance of that object into it, and then that one gets removed. Not that much different, really. A little bit. Okay. So updating text actually works, and I know I just said I don't want to get ahead of myself with efficiency, but I think I am going to go ahead and start at least a little bit. Okay. Let me think here. So actually, maybe this should take new text. I think this actually should probably take new text. And I think in here we should not update this, but instead we should pass it. Opposite of what I said before. But now I have a need for it. Now I think it makes sense because we want access to the new text and the old text. We need two variables. That way we can compare the new text with the old text and not waste time and effort on characters that are the same, hopefully. And again, the most basic version of this is just in the same index. So let's do that first and then worry about the caching of the rest of the stuff. So in the same index, we're going to say, first of all, we're going to have to go and change all of these to new text. Yeah, we're going to have to change all of these to new text. Because again, like I will say, ultimately, as we loop through, I want to be able to still have both. So like while we're inside of update text, self.text is going to be the old text and new text is going to be the new text, as the names hopefully imply a little bit. Place? What? Place? It's not working because it's self. I guess we need to not, we need to just control R, I guess. I don't want to refactor. Okay. So for one thing, we can do super high level. If the new text is the same as the old text, then don't call update text. So if new text not equals self.text, then call update text. So right away, if they set it to the same thing it already is, we're done. We don't need to do anything. But then inside of here, we can go a little fancier. As we're looping through, we're going to say, need to be careful with the skips, though. Careful with the skips. Yeah, and actually we can't throw all these away before we do this either if we want to reuse them. So hmm. Okay, already trickier than I thought. So we need to like do the multi-codes. The multi-codes really throw a wrench in things. I Okay. What we're going to try. We're not going to do this, so we're not going to just delete them all indiscriminately. Instead, every time that we would render a character, we want to check if it's already there. But how do we check if it's already there? Because we need to, like, the multi-characters really throw a wrench in it because we only have the first one. I mean, we know we found the multi one by the time we get to here. Okay. I'm gonna make a thing called I'm gonna call it this, but I don't think it's the best name, but I don't want to think forever about the name. It's not gonna hold bitmaps, which is why I don't think the name is the best, but it is gonna hold either the character. So in the case of ASCII ones, it will hold the single character. So A, semicolon, underscore, whatever, right? Single character as a string at that index in this list. For the emoji, it's going to hold the file name. And then right before we go to open the file, we are going to check if the current index in the list is the same file name or character. And if it is, then we're not going to do anything. We're just going to leave the one that's there and go to the next one. That's the plan. See how it plays out for him. So I'm going to start by in here. If that's not none, we're going to go so first thing we need is if I almost hesitate to put this part first, truthfully. Let's do that next. Let's say in here. In fact, we could do it there and we'll just put the if statement above it later. Can you set by index? Okay. Empty string times the length of text. So then we have one spot in our list for every character in our input string. But it's gonna still be messed up because of the multi-character ones. Okay. Don't do that. Instead, we say if I is less than length of cache list thing. Then we put it in. Else we append it. As we're going through the list, we either want to store it at the index where we are in our text, or if we can't do that because our list is not big enough, we want to append it to the end. So in the end, we should end up, if we had only ASCII, we would end up with basically a list with individual characters of our string all broken out. Doesn't sound very useful for ASCII, but then when we get to emoji, it's going to be more useful. So here we're going to say, if that succeeded, then we want to do the same thing here. We're not going to do character, though. Instead, we're going to do the file name. Thing for the 4 wides, and same thing for the double wides, and same thing for the single. So now we have a list of either the character or the name of the emoji that is rendered at that index of the label. And so now, as we're going through this, we're going to say if... So we found a glyph. We know it's a renderable glyph. So we're going to say if the... So we have to check the length again, which is like... Well, we could try catch, I guess. Yeah, if we're past the end of the list, then we know that we're not matching the one in the list. So we just say if we only consider this if we're less than the length of the list, the cache. If we are, then we also want to say if, well, we don't have to put that, and the character is not the current one. Then we do everything we do. Otherwise, we still need to do some things. I think we, in fact, still need to basically do all of these things. And in order to do so, we need to get a reference to our tile grid, which will be self I in our group, and our bitmap, which will be tilegrid.bitmap. Oh, but we won't need to append. I guess that will do here. Is that gonna... Try it. So we have CircuitPython emoji. Just set afterwards. Start with CircuitPython again. That way we have a bunch of repeated stuff. Emoji label has no bitmap cache list. Probably set it or we tried to use it from update before we set it. From before update. Got a range, update text once per. Oh. That needs to be else. Yeah. It needs to be else. It's out of range. So it's crashing on the first time. Not the second time. So this was false. Yeah, we have a problem with the list. That's so annoying. I really wish you were allowed to just set the next element, right? I wish if you had an empty list that you could set the 0th item. And if you had a list of one thing, you could set the 1 index item. But like you could always set the next index. I wish that was a thing. Honestly, I'm thinking this idea is not so great. It's already way more complex than I wanted it to be for the simple case, which I don't even think is that great. Like, it is good for kind of the high score or whatever, the label where most or some of the characters are going to say the same, but then some are going to change. It would be nice to have it, but I almost just want to jump straight to the one that doesn't care about the index, because it'd be even better to be able to like reuse the C bitmap in a different index if the next string has a C in it. And this one's not going to do that for us. And it's already not working and more complex than I wanted it to be. Okay. Yeah. I think we're going to scrap this attempt of like more efficient per index. I don't think this is useful. I mean, it is useful. It's better than nothing, but it is not good enough, basically, for how much a headache it is to code, it turns out. Okay. Are we back to working? Yes. I also turn that off. Okay. We're going to call this bitmap cache, and it's actually going to be a dictionary. And then each time we create a tile grid, so everywhere where we create a tile grid, but repeating characters, okay, we store a list. No problem, we store a list. So whenever we create a tile grid, we're gonna go self.bitmap cache of, so here we're creating a tile grid because it's an ASCII character. So we're gonna say bitmap cache character, and basically we need to like check and make sure it's in already or not. So if character in bitmap cache keys, so if it is, if the character's already in the keys of the cache, then what we're gonna do is bitmap cache character dot append. We're gonna assume that we find a list there, and we are gonna append the tile grid to it. Yes, I know that's bitmap cache and I appended a tile grid, but that's fine. Ultimately, the tile grid is tied to the bitmap as well. Else, if the character was not already in the dictionary, it was not already in the cache dictionary, then we are gonna bitmap cache character equals a list containing the tile grid. If it's not there, we add the tile grid as a new key. If it is there, we append the tile grid to the list that's already there. So what we'll end up with is a dictionary where the keys are characters or file names, because we're about to do this with emoji file names, and the values are lists of tile grids that hold the bitmap to render that character or emoji file. Ooh, we don't have the tile grid yet. I mean, it will still be file name, though, by the time we get to here, right? I mean, it will still be file name. Yeah. It should still be there. I'm pretty sure it should still be there. This is actually nice because we can just do it all the way down here. We don't need to do it inside each one of those. We basically need the same logic, though. Except it will not be character, it will be file name. Because like that reference before assignment. I think I'm going to leave it. I think because like really all of the stuff above, the only way the stuff above fails is if the character, like if we can't render it. In which case, can't render it. We might need to add a new exception or something, but like in any case, it's a character we can't render, right? It's a thing we're already trying to handle. Okay. This is still gonna get gnarly though. I think. It's still gonna get really gnarly because of the way the tile grid is down here, but the bitmaps are all up here. Still gonna get really gnarly. Let's do ASCII's first. Try to get ASCII working. Okay, so let's go and say... Yeah, and one thing, though, is at some point we're going to want to purge the cache, but let's... We're ahead of ourselves. Okay, so if the found glyph is none, then what we're going to say is if character is in... Well, not in keys... the character's not in keys, then we do all of this the same way we did before. Some of this is going to need to come back out. Going to get gnarly, I think, but thanks. So if it's not in the cache, render it all again. If it is in the cache, we are not going to need to create the tile grid or the bitmap. We're not going to need to blit. So else, if it was in the cache, then... And then what we'll do is we will... This either way, I think, but we'll see. So if it was in the cache, then what we're going to do is tile grid equals bitmap cache character pop. So we want to remove one from the list, one of those tile grids that has that character in it. We want to take one of them, and that's going to be this one. And then bitmap is tg.bitmap. I have no... Oh. Okay. Does that work? No. Has no... Did I change the order of those again? The knit inside update text to 11. Oh, I called it bitmap cache list. This... Oh, wrong. What is... Oh, wrong. This is from the last attempt. No, we're not starting emojis yet. In fact... Guess we... Or I guess... It's not... Wait, does this crash on the first one or the second one? Crashes on the first one. 63. Index out of range. From the pop? Is that saying like we called pop on an empty list? Um, we shouldn't even be here. We shouldn't even be in this branch because we're on the first time. And if the character is not in the cache keys, shoot. We're like trying to use a cached character while it's in use already. All of this code assumes the ones in the cache are not in use. So we basically try to reuse the I. I guess. And then it failed. Or I don't know. But in any case, we can't use the ones from the cache unless they're unused. Like, the whole point is to reuse them when they're no longer in use. Which means we can't... Boy, yeah, this gets super duper complex. Maybe I should have done color first, huh? Insert with an index. Call insert an empty list. Yeah, boy, this whole idea just doesn't really work, right? Because we can't reuse them during the same render, right? We don't want to reuse the tile grids until the next render, until the text has changed. Like we can't go to our cache during the same render. So we kind of need to wait until the text changes to put the tile grids in our cache. And then as we render, we could use them from the cache because we know they're no longer in use because the text is changing. But if we wait until the text changes, put them in the cache, we don't have the file name anymore. And I'm caching them based on the key by the file name. We need to somehow like either not use the file names as the cache keys. But I don't know what else I would use. When we could use the code values, I guess. But I think the code values, I don't think I'm not sure the code values can work as the cache key because, like, for instance, the flags I think are multi-character, and I think the first character is flag. Like, there's a flag emoji that's just flag. So then I think, like, Canadian flag is, like, flag emoji and then, you know, Canada modifier or whatever. Like, I don't know that for a fact, but I think that's how it works. So if we cache it by the code values, then we would get confused between a generic flag and a specific flag. The file name gets around that because the file name contains both. We either need to not use the file name, even though it solves that problem for us. We need a different way to solve that problem. And then we also still need to make the cache work somehow without the file name. With some data that we do have. Kind of boils down to the fact that the way we know, it kind of boils down to the fact that this code, I guess, is a little bit lazy in a way, right? The way it knows it's a 5 wide is it just assumes that it is and tries to load it, and if it succeeds, then it knows it is, and if it fails, then it knows it isn't. I guess we could take these values and, like, use them without putting them into the file name. Well, I don't know. Truthfully, I feel like I'm spinning my tires a little bit. I think that this is a better route than the list. Like the dictionary and being able to reuse tile grids in different indexes, I think is better than the list. But obviously, I have failed to implement it. I guess what I could do is, like, I could take this as trying cache. I wish I would have taken a copy. What, did I change anything other than next X and next Y before we started doing caching stuff? I did the whole updating and yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. Could have committed that back or something. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take the try and cache one. We're gonna go to here. We're gonna, well, it should already be there, I guess. No, we're gonna just painstakingly cut the stuff back out again. Delete that. That'll make it easier to cut out because a bunch of stuff will turn red, except actually a bunch of stuff didn't turn red. All of this, get rid of this, get rid of those, bring this back. Okay, nothing else is using cache. Okay, sorry if that was loud. We're gonna take this, we're gonna go back to the repo, put that, make a new branch, updating text. Could you explain what the current problem is? Lost you somewhere along the way. Yeah, so I, like, at a high level, let me get back to the Learn Guide with display text. I think that the visualization is very helpful. Okay. So our overall emoji text is essentially built like this. It is a group, it extends group, and then it holds one tile grid for each either character or emoji. This one is obviously just characters because it's the old label, but ours, you know, instead of an E, it could be a rainbow emoji or whatever, right? So each tile grid has a bitmap. There's technically also a palette as well, but when you change the text, I would like to be able to reuse these tile grids. So if you set the text to hello the first time, and then you come back and you change the text to like hello world, I would like to reuse all the tile grids from the first text of hello. That's like the high level what I'm trying to solve. I made one attempt where I was storing those, not even the tile grids, but I was storing either the character or the file name of the emoji in a list associated with the index. So I would have stored an H at index 0 and an E at index 1. And then as I was going through, the idea was going to be like check the cache for that index and then try to reuse the tile grid instead of make a new one. That idea I didn't like because it's tied to the index. So the next plan was dictionary. Make a dictionary where the key is the character and the value is a list of tile grids. So it would be all the tile grids that contain that character's bitmap. And then we could pull them out of there and reuse them as we're rendering the next one. The problem that I had with it was, how does the code know when it's allowed to take from the cache? I was putting it into the cache as soon as I was rendering it, but in the case of like the two L's right here, my problem came because I rendered H, I put it in the cache, I rendered E, I put it in the cache, I rendered L, I put it in the cache, and then on the second L, my logic was like, oh, we already have an L, it's in the cache, I'll just use that one. But we can't do that. We need to make a new L this time. Only when we go and reset the entire text to hello world, that's when we need to start reusing tile grids. So after the user changes the text from hello to hello world, then we need to be going through our cache and saying, do we have an H in our cache? Yes, we do. Grab it and use that tile grid instead of making a new one. Do we have an E in our cache? Yes, we do. Grab it, use it. And then so on and so forth. That's how I would like for it to work, but mechanically I failed at coding it. Because of the reason of like, this L tried to reuse this L from the cache. Somehow it needs to like know that it's next time or whatever, right? I don't know the right words to describe this concept, but it needs to like not pull from the cache if it's still in use. So it needs to know that it's in use somehow. How about using the index tile grid as a key in a dictionary? A tuple with the index and the tile grid. It might work. It might work. Truthfully, though, I don't want to necessarily try for... I want to try to do something where I can succeed, hopefully, with only 20 minutes. So I'm going to try to go into color and see if we can get a little bit done there. That might work. That might work, but I made 2 attempts and failed, and I'm hoping to something slightly more beneficial. I mean, we got the updating text working, I will say, though. I'm being a bit hard on myself on the fail. I think updating text is pretty good as well. Probably about time we could remove this, but let's not get off the track too far. I'm trying to define a remote, and I need the get from this, copy that. Yeah, there we go. Also, like, just find a new remote, foamy guy. Even with index and tile grid as the keys, though, I'm pretty sure we still have the same problem of it needs to know like when it's in use, right? It needs this concept of in use. Well, and I also don't know how would we check for seeing if a thing is in the list or not, because we're not going to know, like we're not going to have a reference to the H tile grid when we want to come and check if it's in the cache. We need like a string, like the character, which is what I was using. The string H is what I was using as the key. But if it's the tile grid instance itself, we won't have that instance when it comes time to check if it's in the cache. But even if we did, I still think we still have this problem of, as we're rendering, we need to not use the cache unless the one that's in there is not in use. So we either need to only add them when they're no longer in use, or else we need to figure out how the logic can check if it's in use somehow. Could maybe hide them or something. That might be a way. But yeah, anyway, I do want to try something else real quick here. Also, no, I don't want to buy any viewers. Congratulations that you lasted longer than the average person who tries to sell viewers before getting banned, because I was explaining something. You are now banned, my friend, over on Twitch. My apologies for... I'm apologizing, but you're banned. Don't try to sell me. Colors. Let's test something. Let's put a background in. I think that some of the emoji are transparent and some are not, which will complicate the foreground background thing, possibly. Now that I'm saying that out loud, though, I'm not actually sure if it will. We might care that much ultimately. We'll have to see. We don't do that yet, actually. Let's just leave that how it is. Let me make a background color, basically. So BG equals a bitmap. I'm going to go non-efficient at all. We're just going to make it the size of the screen. There's better ways to do this, but I'm not doing them right now. Palette. BG tile grid. Okay, main group. Put that. Yeah. Okay, so some of these are transparent, some of them are not. So like goggle. Okay, that's weird that these look like they're moving. That's like the webcam / streaming, whatever. I don't know, but yeah, anyway. So like cool face guy, you know, smiley face with glasses, that one transparent. We can see the white. Goggles, transparent. We can see the white. Alien, transparent. Skull and crossbones doesn't seem to be transparent. I mean, it is white, so showing it on white, I guess, would be difficult, but I feel like that's a problem for the user, not the emoji file. Ta-da, right? We don't, it doesn't seem to be transparent, whereas heart is, and laptop is, but save is not, but snake is, but rainbow is not. That's going to be making it a little bit tricky. That is going to be making it a little bit tricky. Is it? Maybe. What if we assume that black will be index 0 in the palette and we just make index 0 transparent? That could work, right? Sometimes, maybe, if we get lucky. So that actually did work for the ones that are visible here. Like there's some chance we could have just clobbered color pixels in a different one. Theoretically, in these ones at least, that works fine to my eye. I'm not comparing pixel to pixel. It's possible it got messed up technically, but it looks at first glance okay. Okay. So then theoretically now we could go and actually do this and make it look like something, right? So if we wanted like, let's say we wanted like a blue background. And let's say we want yellow text. Yeah, there we go. So, you know, obviously the blue heart, very hard to see on a blue background. You know, the blue save icon kind of blends into the background, obviously, but it does work. I'm pretty stoked about that. We could do maybe, let's do green instead of blue. A very bright green though. Also, I know we're almost to the end here and I made it almost all the way, but I do have to run to the restroom. Right back. BRB. Does the emoji repo state that they are indexed and or indexed properly to have the background? I don't think so. So they're definitely not all indexed. Some of them are RGB. Which totally... They might still put black at this, well... I mean, black. So for RGB, black will be 0. Probably, if there are ones that are RGB and they have the color black in them, we probably broke them with that transparency code. We probably broke them. We probably made all the black pixels transparent. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of like information. There's a giant zip of images. There's also font files. If you're doing on a computer or whatever, you can use TTF. Each glyph is at most 10 by 10. I don't know what that's talking about. I don't know if that applies to the pictures, which we downloaded here, or only the TTF. Not sure. It's all about the font. Yeah, so there's not a lot of details, but they did make them available. I found the program PNG check. Found a program called PNG check. which you can output a bunch of information about the picture, including here. This basically tells you that it's indexed, and in fact it also tells you that it's indexed and has 4 or less colors. It tells you the bit depth also. There are some RGBs. This tells you the filters per the scanline rows, like we were talking about yesterday. That's what Neurodoc fixed. So theoretically, like the way I found the New Zealand flag is actually a nice test case because of its different scan lines, it actually uses at least one of every kind of filter. There are, I think, 4 kinds of filters, plus also a 5th if you count no filter. So 5 total, ways that it could be filtered or not for the 5th. The New Zealand flag emoji currently, because it could get updated, I guess. Currently, it uses at least one of each of those 4 types of filters, and it uses, I'm pretty sure there's a 0 as well. But actually, I'm not positive about that, though, so it might just be the 4 filters without a 0. So I could script this to find an RGB one, which is probably a good idea to do ultimately. The other thing we could do, though, is, which I think there's some merit to this, right? So, like, right now, let me undo this. And so now we have white text. So I undid the yellow as well. So we have white text, black background. We have emojis that are transparent. Would it make sense maybe to have only a foreground color? Like my original thought was foreground and background, which is how label works and how bitmap label works. But I'm almost tempted, like, what if we only had a foreground color? And what if you wanted a background, it would be up to you to make a background behind it, right? And then you could still extend this, right? You could extend emoji text and add a background to it. But the base class, maybe it just shouldn't worry about the background. Maybe the base class should just render like this. I wonder if you can check if an image is indexed after you load it by image load. I guess maybe you can check the size of the palette? Because emojis have color a bit different than a single color. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking is like... So I will say too, all this ideas, all the ideas like Serenity OS, I got the idea from Scott. Scott was talking on Deep Dive. There was a different emoji set, which was monocolor, in which case, like, then foreground and background, I think makes total sense. When, like you're saying, the emojis here, they're all different colors. So I'm almost thinking, like, maybe this class, at least, only has foreground, and what it will do is just set the color of the text to the foreground, and then if you want a background, it will be up to you to do something like I did here with the background for the display. You could, of course, make it the size of your label. You could make it a little bit bigger with padding. You could make it appear however you want. You could even use display shapes if you wanted to get like a border and a background color if you wanted to be super fancy. But yeah, I think that way we keep this class super simple, only render the foreground. That way we're not going to end up with those blocks. Because, like, if we were to allow a background here, right, like, we're going to end up with blocks unless we somehow fill in the emoji. Yeah, I think I like that. So you'll be able to set a foreground color, and it will be the color of the text. And then the emojis, these ones are full color. I will say, too, we may still end up with other emojis, right? This is a library level class that uses these emojis. we may still end up with a totally different kind of emojis in the core that are smaller and monocolored and stuff. I would not be surprised by that at all. But these ones are like their own special case over here, I feel. And I think that it should be fairly easy actually to be able to do that, because we would just need to like say you provide the color and then we're going to set the palette to that color. So here we could totally just say foreground color, give it a default of white for now. That way it renders on a black background, which is the default for the background. Scoot in. And we'll go... Actually, what we'll do is here we will do that and then turn 0 on that. But we don't need this in the code level. Yeah, user code. Did I? Visually it should be the same. But now we should be able to pass a color. So we should say like foreground color blue. There we go. Okay, let's grab this one now. This has updating and foreground color. I think I'll just put that to the same branch. Theoretically, I could have also put color in the branch. Those. All right. All that stuff will keep. Foreground color. And we'll get this into the repo as well. What if there's always a background color, but you can choose for it to be transparent? I think that I want to leave background color to a different class. I think I want to keep this class foreground only. And then like you can always either make a new class that extends this one and add a background to it, because it's just a group, so you could append more things in front of it, in front of the text, I mean. Or you could make another class that doesn't extend this one, but, you know, is a group and it creates one of these ones and it creates a display shape or whatever you want for your background and it puts it behind. So, like, visually, backgrounds will totally be achievable in a number of different ways, but I think I want to leave them out of this class just so that this class stays simpler. Because if we did it all inside of here, we are going to get into a spot where we, I think, are going to have to be, like, trying to, like, modify pixels inside the bitmap, and I don't want to go down that route necessarily. The emoji bitmaps, to be clear. The ASCII ones are easy, right? The ASCII ones are super easy to have a background color for. But the emoji ones, some of them will be easy. The transparent ones that we saw that were already transparent would be easy-ish. The non-transparent ones would be harder. And in any case, I think just doing foreground only and letting the user code be totally in control of the background best. It makes this code super simple. It makes the visuals very flexible, right? Because some people may want a background with more padding, right? You know, more like margin around the text that's colored, and other people may want less, and some people may want a border and a background color. By keeping this to foreground only, it makes it so all that stuff is totally possible just by stacking groups like you normally would, or stacking things inside of groups like you normally would. I think that's how I want to do this one. But again, like you could totally extend it and add it to there. It'd be, I think, well, the complexities that I just mentioned aside, you know, display IO wise, it'd be super easy. You got to solve for those complexities still, but okay. Did I commit this? I think yes. All right. I think I will call it a day there. So thank you to everyone for hanging out. It was lovely to see all of you. Thanks for the folks in the chat. Let's see. I will be back next week at the normal time. That's about 10 a.m. Central Time on Saturday. So I'll be back next week at the normal time. The following week, so the 7th/8th of March, I will be on Deep Dive on the 7th. I will not be here on the 8th. So there will be no stream on Saturday the 8th. But I will be on Deep Dive the night before. And then I'll also be on Deep Dive the next 2 weeks, the 14th and the 24th. And I don't know about Saturdays yet. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I'm not sure. But definitely should be good for next week at this time. The following week, no go, but I'll be on Deep Dive. Then I'll be on Deep Dive again, and a maybe. We'll be back to maybes for those. All those are covered. I was just pointing at stuff that is covered up by my head, which I can see now that I'm looking at the preview. So unfortunately, the visuals of my calendar were not very useful, but hopefully what I said made sense. We'll be back next week at the normal time. The following week, no Saturday, but yes, Friday night Deep Dive. Following 2 weeks after that, yes, Deep Dive, maybe Saturday. And yeah, take it easy, everybody. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, good weekend, and I will see you later. Thanks for hanging out.